Sup world, Heartseeker is back, for real this time, as not only the bow rogue build you've known it to be, but also Rogue's best pit pusher with what I named the Shotgun Rogue variant, which I'll show later. What you see first is the Victimized variant, which is the standard way to play Heartseeker this season. This plays like a true bow rogue, with never having to get close and can just fire away from a distance with no complicated buttons, the preferred way to approach this build. If you want more zoom, you can drop Smoke Grenade for Teleport Flurry to move around more freely, which is more helpful in content like Nightmare Dungeons and Helltides, where speed is more important than power. Standard Heartseeker can get you to pit tier 110 plus with optimized gear. Here we have close quarters combat version of Heartseeker, which plays more like an assassin, jumping around and mainly just targeting elites. This setup is nearly identical to Victimized with very minor changes, so it's something you can try out without having to commit if you don't mind jumping in to get your hands dirty. Neither setup is noticeably stronger than the other when fully optimized, it's just a matter of preference and style of play. Finally, we have the Shotgun Rogue, which uses Orphan Maker alongside adding another basic skill, Forceful Arrow with a 1-to-1 rotation. This is a setup that you'd mainly want to use in pit tier 100 plus due to its clunky but powerful nature. It has the raw power to get you to 115 plus with optimized gear. But be warned, this playstyle has a lot of buttons and not everyone will enjoy the rotation and the slower pace. Oh, and any variant will absolutely destroy bosses. You pick how you want to do that. Let's talk more about Heartseeker. So before we start, I'm just gonna let you know I'm not gonna go over every skill point, every gear stat, as well as every Paragon point, just because it'll be a long video. So I'm just going to talk about the things that make the build actually tick, and then you can look at the planner in the description below to take a look at all the more intricacies into how it all functions together as a whole. So first off, maximize Heartseeker because this is the brunt of your build. Other things that are important will be Smoke Grenade, and I do take Subverting Smoke Grenade, which is the poison Smoke Grenade, and for a good reason. And the reason for that is the majority of our damage comes from a glove called Pangorgers, which we'll talk more about later. But you want to get the mark up as often and as efficient as possible. So while other skills can proc Pangorgers that isn't a basic attack, such as, let's say, that, you see this little like gray mark above them, that's the Pangorgers mark. But if you notice, it only lasts for 3 seconds when I cast the cow traps there. But if I do Poison Smoke Grenade, the mark lasts considerably longer. Okay, so we do have multiple ways to be able to proc the mark, but one of the main ways would be Poison Smoke Grenade, which is Subverting Smoke Grenade, is going to help us kind of keep that up more often, so therefore we don't have to cast it as much, and again equals more damage. Next important thing will be Code Imbuement. Now if you notice, we don't have Code Imbuement on our bar, but we do have an aspect called Code Clip, which gets all the bonuses of Code Imbuement. It basically makes your basic attack code imbued, and so you get all the benefits by having Code Imbuement here. So you want to do that. Also stack your Frigid Finesse. That's kind of where all that comes from. Okay, so important that you do have that. You do want to maximize your Shadow Clone because your Shadow Clone is dealing all the damage. You're not really doing much of anything at all. And you want to take Unto Dawn to also make your Shadow Clone even stronger. Innervation is also very important. Maintaining your energy can be a little bit rough on the earlier stages of building the build, so you definitely want to make sure that you maximize innervation. And we take Victimize for our key passive. Now in the past, it used to be one of those things where we had to kind of stack vulnerable damage to get like a high proc value of it. Well, the proc now is just 200% baseline to your weapon damage, which we don't really care about. That doesn't really do much damage at all. But when Victimized proc itself, it basically debuffs the monsters, which means that the mobs that got hit by the Victimized procs now take 75% increased damage. So this actually happens quite quickly and easily by just casting Heartseeker. You don't have to even worry about trying to proc Victimize of any sort. It's just going to happen naturally and very quickly. And those mobs that get hit by Victimize will take 75% more damage. So for gearing, you actually want 4 Chaos Uniques, and 3 of them are going to actually be gloves. So you're going to want Pain Gorgers, Boundless, which is actually the most important glove. You're going to want Grasp of Shadow, and you also want Fist of Fate. So it doesn't really matter where these 3 gloves end up landing. One of the gloves can actually end up landing on the actual glove slot, like for instance, Grasp of Shadow specifically, because the unique affix doesn't really matter if it's chaos or not, because it has an ICD still of 1 second. So the shadow clone from this glove can only come out once per second. So increasing that with chaos makes 0 sense, nor does it matter. So you can just wear this as a regular glove and it is fine. The 4th chaos unique you want is Crown of Lucian, which I think I have it on the boot here. But like I said, it can go any of the places that you want. For the mythic, you want Air of Perdition. I know you see Shroud here. It's just because I don't have an Air of Perdition. Why do we want Air of Perdition? It's because we don't have much movement speed at all. With the chaos uniques being the way that they are, there is no room for any chaos boots, and therefore movement speed, which feels so much quicker at getting around Sanctuary, etc. Okay, I do want to talk more about Pain Gorgers. It doesn't really care about projectiles, so shooting more than 1 projectile or having the temper, more projectiles doesn't proc more Pain Gorgers. It only procs on the first hit of the projectile. That also includes the ricochet. It also includes not proccing on the ricochet for Heartseeker. So with that being said, we actually go for double damage on the 2-hander instead of going for projectiles to maximize that, because our Shadow Clone is dealing most of the damage. And since Pain Gorgers is a big part of that, we want to maximize the Shadow Clone damage to the Pain Gorgers rather than the amount of projectiles we get, because Pain Gorgers doesn't really care about the projectiles. This doesn't mean that your Shadow Clone doesn't deal damage. It just means that it's not the brunt of everything that's happening on its own. But we still do want to take projectiles on our 1-hander on the side here. Definitely want to make sure that you have a Shard of Varathiel. It's our way to be able to spend energy, to be able to run our specialization, which is Preparation, which also gets our Shadow Clone off a cooldown faster, as well as Dark Shroud fast, so we can keep rinse and repeating the cycle. So Shard of Varathiel is an extremely important unique that you want to try to get as early as you possibly can. You're going to want Ahu Cax. Basically, with this combination, you're going to almost have 100% uptime on Cax itself, and that's going to amplify your damage a ton. It doesn't really work well on bosses because, well, you're only hitting the boss and you can't really crowd control, so you get next to zero value on bosses. But it absolutely destroys everything else for the most part. Other things you can use outside of Ahu, you can use Neo. Neo's also very good for Cax. Probably my second favorite because it has about a 50% uptime on Cax because you have the barrier up almost the entire time. So that's also a really good choice. The other rune choice, which I kind of get questions about, is Set. Okay, generally you would do Sur Set. I actually kind of like Neo Set just a little bit better than Sur Set, but either one of those works really well. But the reason why we do take Set is because the wolves actually do quite a few things. One, it also procs vulnerable, not that you need to, but a nice kind of have. 2, it can freeze enemies, which just makes easier access or quicker access to Frigid Finesse. And 3, the most important part of this, the main reason why you take it, is that it's considered a skill and therefore it procs Pain Gorgers. So let's go ahead and kind of have the wolves kind of go out and chomp. And with Neo, basically, I keep spawning more wolves, right? Kind of cool. But if you notice, we have this little mark above the head. So as long as they're chomping away at enemies anywhere around the battlefield, you get the mark. And if you get the mark, you get Pain Gorgers. You get Pain Gorgers, you do a ton of damage as long as your Shadow Clone is out. So that's the reason why we take it. It's a very efficient way to be able to prop Pain Gorgers itself alongside with Smoke Grenade and things. So therefore you always have that mark, and therefore you're always doing a lot of damage. Okay, so that is why Set is extremely important for a build like this. Something to also mention in terms of stats is concerned If you notice, I go for vulnerable damage here on these two pieces of gear rather than going for crit damage. And the reason for that being is because, well, crit damage, out of crit damage does not really work with Pangorger's proc. So, however, vulnerable damage does. So that's the reason why we roll vulnerable instead of crit damage there. If you are struggling with energy, which I get this a lot too as well, there are several things that you can do to solve that. What ends up happening usually, people end up getting Crown of Lucian Chaos Unique before they get the Starless Skies, so they end up chunking their energy away and having a hard time keeping up their energy. If this happens to you and you don't have a Starless yet, there are several things that you can do. One, make sure that you still have your Resourcefulness Elixir popped at all times for more damage and also to help with your resources, of course. Two, make sure that we do have primary resource restore on the ring as a temper, and then on the regular ring you want to have, well, the non-starless ring, you want to have innervation on the other to kind of help you get your energy back. And on that ring, I'm gonna just use this one as a placeholder, but on that ring, that second legendary ring, you want to do energizing aspect. Okay, so this is what you want to take if you do not have a Starless Skies and you want to run Crown of Lucian and try to keep your energy reserves up. It'll still be a little tough to do so, but it is possible. Other things is if you're still running out of energy and you still can't maintain and you're shooting things, you're actually hitting things and you can't maintain, other things you can do is you can actually not go Crown of Lucian for now. You can go with God Slayer's Crown, which is also very good. Ward of Hakan is also ironically very good because it has the damage versus distance multiplier and also a lot of ultimate damage, as well as a lot of imbuement ranks, which gives you faster freeze. So Ward of Hakan, interestingly enough, works well as a replacement for Crown of Lucian. So you can do any of those if you're still struggling with energy before you get Starless. Other things you also can do is not really worry about Cax, because Cax does spend a lot of energy too as well. It spends all your energy when it procs, so you can just remove that in the meantime until you're able to solve your resource issues. And then instead you could run with something like Lum. Lum is also is very good. It gives you energy back. I will go Poc Lum to maximize your energy return on that for you. Okay, so those are the ways that you can manage your energy for this particular setup. Now, when it comes to capping your armor and resistances, it's a bit harder this season because we're running with a bunch of chaos uniques, and therefore our pant slot, which usually has the armor all res and armor percent stuff, is no longer the case. So to be able to cap, you definitely want to try to do armor on your amulet. If you notice, I didn't do that. I feel fine being right under cap. I wouldn't suggest people do that, but I'm okay with it. But generally speaking, you probably want to do armor percent on your amulet, and then obviously take as much as you can on the Paragon board that I have linked in the description below and the planner. So, and for most builds in the game, because we're all going to struggle with this, you do want to make sure you have Soothing Spices up, as well as Song of the Mountain. For both of these, will generally get you capped or close to capped for your armor and resistance, so therefore you can stay alive. So just make sure that these two are a part of your arsenal, as well as Resourcefulness Elixir, basically every hour that you are playing on T4 content. Is it nice to have, or sorry, is it it's kind of a pain in the ass, to be honest, but it is what it is. And yeah, that's just how this season goes. And lastly, let's talk about the Orphan Maker setup, which is the Shotgun Rogue for the pit push variant of the build. Now, I have Dash here because I was actually trying to make some speed farm variant, which didn't really it works, but I just rather just play it the regular way, to be honest. You generally would go Smoke Grenade here instead with the poison, so check the planner for that. But other changes are mainly just we don't run any mythics here. So if you notice, I have 5 chaos armors and I have no mythics at all whatsoever. We're dropping Starless too as well. The reason why we have 5 chaos armors is because we need to put in the Orphan Maker, and the Orphan Maker is just a bigger multiplier or anything that Air or Shroud will be able to give us. So we just run 5 Chaos Armors and just call it a day. Now, for the Starless guys, the reason why we don't run that is because, well, we don't really attack really fast with the Orphan Maker. We'll talk about mechanics in a second. So, unfortunately, since we don't attack fast, we need to spend more energy quickly, and we can't do that with the Starless Skies up here because of this, helping us cut the resource in half. So if we don't spend energy quick enough, we can't get the barrier up, and then we die, right? So that's the reason why we don't take Starless with this setup, because we want to live in the higher pits. So talking about more about the Orphan Maker's mechanic, it has a reload mechanic, which basically kind of puts the basic skills on like a small short cooldown before you can use them again. Not just basic skills, but also core skills too as well. So if I was to fire, let's say just Heartseeker, if you notice, has a long cooldown, right? And that's just the reload mechanic. However, it's only for that particular skill. So if I was to do, let's say Heartseeker and then Force Arrow right after that, I can kind of take away some of that annoyance by rotating between skills, which is how the devs designed this particular unique to function. So, however, there is a 100% attack speed cap despite the penalty that they put on you, and that attack speed cap can come from both categories. That includes cap 1 and cap 2. So you can have 66 in cap 1, 34 in cap 2, and reach that 100, and then you're capped. There, no more attack speed is going to help you with the Orphan Maker reload mechanic. So, but that's how that works. And basically, you want to alternate between here Heartseeker and Forceful Arrow. We choose Forceful Arrow because it has a 50% multiplier that's new to this season, as long as we're close enough to knock them back, and then they become immobilized. So we definitely want to be close. Play this with close quarters combat, and we want to alternate between the skills here. So it looks like this, basically. So it's really slow. It can be a bit clunky, but it hits incredibly hard, as you saw in the earlier videos. I mean, you can hit anywhere between 20 to 30 trillion, possibly even higher than 30 trillion, depending on how good your gear is, etc. So, but yeah, for the most part, that is gearing. For your Mercenaries, we're going to take right here. We're going to do the all res as well as inspiration for the damage buff. Nothing else really here to talk about. Pretty standard stuff. For the other Mercenary, we want to take Variana, and this one's actually kind of important because she actually has a skill called Earthbreaker, in which gives us a knockdown, something that we really don't have in our kit. So having this whenever she comes out and she does this will increase our Malice damage that we have, or the other part of Malice, sorry, for our damage. So this is important that we do take her for this particular build. So that is Mercenaries. So now we go to Chaos perks, and let me take off the boot just so that I can get back to normal speed here. But we go to Chaos perks here. We take a Beast Cornered, Unpredictable Alchemy, Accelerating Chaos, and Marred Guard. Marred Guard primarily is here for 2 reasons. One, it gives you a lot of armor, which is going to help you cap. It's like half the reason you take it. The other part is the increased barrier. So with a Beasting Cornered, basically draining all of our life, we do take Marred Guard to be able to help with a bigger barrier, so therefore we can stay alive. Now, and Beast Corner is the reason why, if you're watching anybody play Heartseeker or any builds pretty much this season, we're basically at low life, okay, 10% almost the entire time, okay. Now, with that being said, it doesn't mean that you're gonna die or that you're super glassy, because when you are lower life, you also get damage reduction as well the lower that you are. So ironically enough, your shield is actually, or your barrier is actually quite tough. So you're pretty tanky, believe it or not, even at 10%. And you do want to be at 10%, believe it or not, because you also gain increased damage for the, having less life. So you want to be in this state. I know it sucks kind of having this little red hue around, but that's going to maximize your damage to a ridiculous degree. So that's the reason why these two are very important, and they work really well off each other. Unpredictable alchemy is another, which is kind of an unfortunate one, because getting the triple imbuement on your basic is actually super cool, but it gets overridden by cold clip, which you cannot get rid of. Cold clip is way too important. But unfortunately, cold clip overrides this. Without cold clip, you'll be able to get the triple imbuement, but your shadow clone will not get the triple imbuement, which again, all your damage comes from shadow clone. So if it doesn't get it, it becomes kind of, well, you can't really take advantage of it. But we do take it though. We do take it anyways, because the imbue skills deal 40% increased damage does work on shadow clone when it has cold clip. Easy enough. So you still want to take it for that particular purpose only. Then we take accelerating, because honestly the other options aren't really that great at all, and so it's just here, doesn't really do anything. It's just kind of a filler. Now there is some current research being done right now on unstable power as a possibility, running Shaco, get your GA cooldown, and doing this with Orphan Maker. So there is a possibility that this might be in the slot over Accelerating Chaos. But I have my reservations on that, only because, for one, overpower does not work on shadow clones, so shadow clone can't overpower at all. And two, critical strike damage in general is pretty wonky with Pain Gorgers. Like, the critical strike damage additive does not work with Pain Gorgers, nor does the weapon mastery critical strike damage multiplier for Pain Gorgers. So with those two things said, it kind of makes this, on the surface, dead in the water. Now, it could work differently than regular crit damage or whatever the case may be, and that might actually give us that. We're still doing research on that now. We'll let you know if we find anything. Okay. And lastly, Paragon Board. Please do not look at this. I put this together as I was leveling, and I had to kind of skip a board or two and put boards later. So this is actually kind of a mess. What I do want to talk about are the glyphs: Headhunter, Anti, Control, Devious, and Fluidity. Most builds that have some sort of imbuement and base is going to have these 5 glyphs. If your build doesn't have an imbuement, you will do chip or whatever other glyph that might actually kind of help your build. This is just pretty standard amongst the rogues here. Boards that you will take, as long as you have an imbuement, will be Eldritch Bounties is going to be one. Witness is going to be there. Cheats is going to be there, especially with the rework of the Chief's legendary node. Dance Macabre, which is what I have here. This is depending on whether you're playing Victimize or Close Quarters Combat, or the Orphan Maker Shotgun variant here. So I either do this or Exploit Weakness. Exploit Weakness is 5% less damage, but it gives you a 20% damage reduction there, so that makes you tankier. So I have that on the Victimize setup, but on Close Quarters Combat I do Dance instead, just so therefore I can get the close damage here. But outside of that, most of this is pretty normal and standard. Most rogue builds are going to be using most of the same Paragon boards throughout, so nothing really crazy or fancy that I need to mention here that you probably already don't know about. And to look at what the boards do and look like, make sure you check out the planner in the description below. Now, it's been a minute since I made a Heartseeker video, literally 3 seasons ago. I think season 7 was the last time I actually did one. So it's been a minute. Sorry about that, but there are actually some changes this time around that makes it worth talking about. So hope you enjoyed. Hope you are gonna have fun with Heartseeker, regardless of which variant that you choose to play. As always, till next time.